Hi there everyone, I'm Claire Sparrow. I'm coming to you from Pilates, my lovely studio in Leeds. And today I'm going to teach you a sample class for whole body pelvic health on the reformer. We're going to begin today with an element of the breath and release work that we do in the mat work series, the pre-Pilates for our whole body pelvic health. So we need our trusty ball ready to do some seated breathing. So I've got a couple of red springs on the reformer right now. The carriage is nice and stable, and I've got my feet solid on the floor. So depending on the height of your reformer, perhaps you might need to sit on the box or something else on the floor rather than the reformer. And then you're going to sit on the ball. So you take the ball and place it directly under the base of your pelvis. Make sure your feet are still anchored and secure to the floor. And we're going to be seated and breathing here. Allow your eyes to gently close and imagine you're sitting back to back with yourself. So feel the back of your head against the back of your imaginary self that you're sitting back to back with. Sit with the back of your shoulders against yourself and the back of your pelvis also. So you're finding that gentle, tender way of sitting against another person, against yourself, your imagined self, to help you to sit upright with ease. Much more ease than if we pulled an imaginary string out of the top of our heads. This has got a much more gentle sensation to it. And you're breathing, allowing your breath to expand and fill your body fully. And then gently blinking the eyes open, letting in the light. And take the ball out and just pop it to one side. Sitting and noticing, I always close my eyes. You don't have to close your eyes, but give yourself a moment to notice. How does it feel as you sit here on the edge of your carriage or your box and you feel the base of your pelvis in a way that you didn't before? Can you feel the gentle motion of expansion as you're inhaling and that gentle rising as you're exhaling? And then we're going to come to continue in a seated position and continue supporting our breath and how it can support the pelvic floor function. So we're going to have just one red spring. So I'm going to slip off one of those reds. You have some options here for your leg positions. We can have the legs just swept to one side, more like Cleopatra, or you can have your Z-sit position. You're going to know from the screening assessment of your Z-sit whether this is comfortable and available to you. You can also sit on the soft ball to help to create the stability and awareness through the pelvis that you need, and that's what I'm going to choose to do today. You can also cross your legs. The hand is on the foot bar and it's slightly forwards of the line of your shoulder so that it's following the curvature of your ribs and your scapula. Take your free arm out to the side and gently start reaching it in the direction it's going and the other arm in the direction of the foot bar to bring you over. Your pelvis is sinking into the ball or the carriage underneath you, and we're simply going to stay here and breathe today. So this is an intro session. It's gentle, it's just bringing our awareness to the relationships through the body as it pertains to Pelvic Health. So we breathe here three-dimensionally like we would do in the mat work, but we've got a little bit more feedback here. So we're breathing into the ribs. Imagine that you're inflating a balloon, so it's in all directions under the ribs. And as you're breathing out, you might find that you can just tease yourself out a little bit further. You're gazing straight forwards, and be aware of what the ribs are doing here. So we watch for the rib cage coming forwards or being flexed into the back also. You can imagine you're double glazing and you're sat between that, and then we'll slowly come up to sitting. Take your ball out and spin round to the other side so that you can go ahead and have that experience on the other side. And know that, of course, we're different from one side to the other, so you might find that you need something in addition to the ball. And we reach the hands out. The hand is forwards of the shoulder, so we're following the curvature. And then we reach both hands away, which creates that up and over sensation. So we're going to be watching for shoulders in the ears. We need the shoulder blades to rotate around the rib cage and not be fixed and stuck there. And once we're in this position, keep the foot bar at arm's length. I lengthen my hands out, but you could wrap your fingers around the bar to create more stability. You're imagining the balloon in the ribs in this top side, and you're inflating forwards and backwards and outwards and inside and up and down in all directions like a balloon would. And each time you breathe out, you can encourage a little bit more teasing out while your pelvis is still sinking into the ball. And then we come up. And we can put our ball to one side again. We're going to put the ball down, and we're going to have two red springs on as we did before. Now, if you or your client have diastasis, the separation of the abdominal muscles, then you need to encourage them to lie down sideways and then onto their back. You might also vary the spring according to the reformer that you have, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. So we're going to come all the way over onto your side and then onto your back. Keep my pack there. And settle in. It's important to have a cushion or a headrest up for the client to help them to sink and melt the ribs down, unless you know that they're quite flexed already, or quite extended rather already. You might choose to do something a little different for them. So we're going to have the arches, so just in fact where the end of the arch meets the heel, that's the part of the foot that's going to be on the bar. You then take one leg across, and you're going to go from side to side across that arch part of the foot, because this is a massage and release there, as well as through the base of the pelvis and around the side of the hip. Now, as we're going side to side across the pelvis, you're going to notice whether or not this is super tight and restricted, or whether there's some ease in it. So if it feels very tight and restricted, you're going to take their foot down onto the platform underneath. If you need to put an extender in there, you can put your extender in there. You will need to bring their foot down. So important that we don't begin a movement where we're already in a lot of tension, because then there's no range of movement possible. So we can then end up injuring ourselves. So remember that we need to have some range possible. Okay, and then come to the center, unhook, other leg goes across, and you might notice that it's tighter on one side compared to the other. So I feel like it's a bit tighter on this side, but if I put my foot down there, it's not really doing anything. So my other option would be that I can actually take my foot bar down a little bit lower. So that's going to give me just a little bit more range. So it feels easier to move for me from there than it did with the bar all the way up. So there's a little bit of play and give that you can do with the setup of your apparatus depending on the individual and also depending on the make and model of your reformer. So I'm going to bring it back up again, and you will be able to assist your client with that if you're a teacher. So I brought that all the way back up, and I've still got my 2 reds on. And then coming back, oh yes, that's much better. So I feel like I've really opened up the base of the pelvis and I'm ready to go. So I'm going to go all the way out, pressing the foot bar away with just that part where the arch ends and the heel begins. The back of the ribs are being held by the carriage underneath you, a bit like you're lying on a memory foam mattress, and it's just supporting you perfectly. And we want to delay the movement, so I'm sending my foot bar away before I actually start to move out. Send the foot bar away, I was a bit quick that time, before you actually move. So it's like if you were going to go into a room that was dark, you'd reach your hand in, switch the light on before you go in. It's the same idea here. Can you ignite the light before you go? And it's a very different sensation. Ignite the light and then go out. Now we're going to do a little bit more where we're out here. So now what we're going to do is bounces, pulses out here, really going from the foot, from that part of the foot that meets the bar. And we're pulsing, and you'll see here that if the head and ribs are not supported, there'll be a lot of bouncing around, or you might feel a lot of bouncing around, so you might need extra head cushions or headrest up further, and then slowly bring that back in. Okay, so then we're going to go on the balls of the feet, cross the leg over, and you're slightly turned out, so it will be like being in Pilates V, but here's with the leg out, and you're going to press out and slowly in. Now you get to control, so I'm not coming all the way in because I already know from my side to side that I need to tease that out a little bit more in the back of the hip, and this exercise is certainly going to help me do that. So the heel stays lifted as you press away. All the other normal considerations around the head, neck and shoulders melting down, and you focus on that hip. When you're coming in, notice as your sacrum, the center of gravity, being dragged to one side or the other, can you really leave that in the middle? Can you feel it in the middle? Leave it in the middle. Changes very much how you experience that hip. And then we take that off. Notice how it feels. And then we'll do the other side. And I've kept with 2 red springs here. It's important that you alter it and adapt it to the individual. So you might want more, you might want less. A client beginning this might want a little touch less, 1 red, 1 blue. Again, it all depends on the apparatus. You know, we have some Allegros where the spring feels lighter, and this is a stop machine, and it certainly feels heavier. If you've got a classical piece, it might feel heavier again, and it's just dependent on what the apparatus and the person in front of you calls for in the exercise. Okay, so we're going to go one more time on this side, teasing out. Oh, it's so lovely, just what the doctor ordered today. And then uncross your legs and just be here for that moment and notice how it feels. Okay, Now we're going to come into some quadruped work. So like I said, this is a sample class. You've always got bridging and your feet in straps, so many different variations that we can do. So I'm going to go with one red for this quadruped series, taking the foot bar all the way down for this. And you could use a platform extender here, or you can just use the platform that's there. Okay, we're going to start really simply with a cat stretch. This is going to help to establish where the quadruped alignment is, and it's going to help mobilize the spine and also give us a little bit of information for the next exercise. So make sure that I've got the hands underneath the shoulders. Remember, your shoulders are wider than your hips, your knees are under your hips, and the shins are long. Now, I can have my feet just gently through the shoulder rest, which is going to help me to activate the outer hip and the outer, the lateral line of the body, basically. And with the hands on the platform, I'm sending it away slightly, so I'm not sinking into it. It's really important that we're active through the shoulder girdle and not hanging out there. So send the platform away, keep it at arm's length, and think about holding up the ceiling with the back of your body. You can also imagine that you've got the box, the reformer box on your back, and you've got to hold it up. And it really gets you out of that position. It gets the clients to feel the back of the body a lot more. If you're looking down at the platform, guaranteed your head is in the wrong position. So you need to be gazing ahead of it. Let's cat stretch. So you're lengthening out and around to make your cat stretch. And like I did, I had a little shift with the carriage. I closed my eyes and moved the carriage. Hopefully you've got your eyes open and you're not moving your carriage. And then lengthening out. As we're doing the cat stretch, think of your arms spiraling inwards to help you encourage that curve and length, spiraling inwards. And with your pelvis, I want you to make sure that you're not bringing it back, you're not bringing it forward. It's lengthening out and around, it's turning above your thigh bones. I like to use an image that you have a paintbrush attached to your tailbone and you're painting a line down the wall behind you, down the skirting boards, along the floor towards your feet, between your shins, and then your head just miraculously arrives there. And then going all the way back out the way you came. So you're painting that line down the wall, the skirting board, the floor, between your feet and shins. And there you go, all the way back out again. So you can have a little rest, a moment before we do our quadruped. We're then going to take the knees wide, okay? So it's controversial, but it makes sense when you think back to the mat work series. We did a lot of quadruped here. So the big toes are together. You're still maintaining that distance, that arm's length with your arms, and then we're going to move the carriage back with the shins. So as you send your shins back, your hip bones are really coming back in away from your thigh bones. So whichever direction you're going in, think about hip bones away from thigh bones. Hip bones away from thigh bones. We're also going to think about that paintbrush at the end of your tailbone. So whichever movement you're doing, whichever direction you're going, that paintbrush is still pointing and painting a dot on the wall behind you, directly behind you. Once more, and then rest there. You can change the spring according to your needs, according to your client's needs, and please go, please do that, okay? You know what you need, what your client needs. We're going to go back into the quadruped for our cat stretch variation. So now we are taking ourselves, knees hip socket width apart, taking ourselves into the cat stretch. So you make that lovely long cat stretch that you did before, and then we take the shins back and then pull them in. So make sure the shoulders aren't up in the ears, the shoulders are on the ribs, and that the tailbone is under. So we've got the knees hip socket width apart, and we're deepening that curve each time we come in. One more. Okay, and then come out. I'm going to add a red spring a blue spring. So we've got a red and a blue. And I'm going to bring the knees together, feet together now, and come back into that cat stretch. And I'm going to do it a little bit more rapidly, out and in. So the emphasis is the in. It's like your knee stretches, but in quadruped. Absolutely fantastic, dynamic pelvic floor. Last one, and then relax. So you might feel a little bit warm after that. Well done. We're going to come and face the other way. You can leave the foot bar down and the spring as it is. And so it's where you look at your former and realize there's no straps, which doesn't matter because we don't actually need the straps, we just need the hardware. Now it's interesting here, I've got the headrest up and I like to keep the headrest up. Often what I will also do is put some sticky here, a sticky pad, any kind of sticky there to help you to get some feedback and traction because your feet are a critical part of this movement. So we sit, we check, have we got space to roll back slightly, and we come up as tall as we can. You're going to imagine that there's a book or a block on top of your head, and you're going to send and hold it balanced up on top of your head, so you're holding it there. Your feet then begin to push the carriage away. Your arms are just there connecting you to the frame, and you keep pushing with the feet, meeting the knees, and it rolls your pelvis back. Now I'm going to keep my pelvis back for as long as I can, like my waistband is being pulled behind me, and then I gradually sit up tall. Now then, we're going to go again. I use the image, this is a mum to boys image, the Hulk. So when the Hulk when he's turning into the Hulk, he bursts out of his clothes. That's what I want you to feel like. You're bursting out of your t-shirt behind you as you come up. So we press through the feet, we're pushing the carriage away, keeping the knees together. You're bursting through your shirt behind you, expanding your waistband more and more and more and more and more, and then you sit tall. So we're going to go again. We've got 2 more to go. You've got that book on top of your head that you're holding up. You're not going to let it drop, and your knees are together, and then the waistband goes back. You can imagine a bungee cord pulling you back around your waist if you had a harness on. 1 more, and you're getting pulled back. Pull back, pull back, pull back. Oh, that's warming to say the least. All right. And then we're going to put the straps, cords down. All right. Notice how it feels as you transition from that to some more upright exercises. We're actually going to use the foot bar to do some squats. So we lift the foot bar all the way up, and you're going to be holding on to the foot bar. You can do this with the hands over or under. The idea is that we're just beginning to introduce upright the things that we did when we were lying down. Some of the footwork, the quadruped ideas, but coming upright. So the idea, we're thinking hip bones away from your thigh bones. So whether you're going down or whether you're coming up, can you keep your hip bones away from your thigh bones? Now, if you're like me and you've got a reformer with a tower on the end, you could come and either hold the tower bar, it doesn't even have to have springs on it, Or you can hold the frame and do the same thing working here, or if you've got a crossbar and that feels better. This one always feels a bit wider for me. So look at what's happening for the person that you're teaching or for yourself in your own body and do what feels good and appropriate. So hip bones away from the thigh bones. Think also about how your tailbone is interacting. So it's not curling under, it's not sticking out. It's just easy between your cheeks as you go down and as you come up. One more time, down, push the floor away to come up. I still feel the sensation of the foot bar at that part of the foot where the arch meets the heel. So as I was pushing up to standing, I could feel like I was pushing the foot bar away. Okay, good. So we've got one more thing to do to bring us upright to standing. The foot bar is going to come all the way down. I'm going to go with a red spring. And again, you could use a standing platform here if you needed, if you wanted to. For the purposes of this particular variation, I'm not going to use one today because it's much more for the outer hip that I'm interested in. So we've got the feet spreading on the carriage and we're going to go out and we're going to stay there, reaching those surfaces away, and just check that your pelvis is underneath. You can imagine that you're within the double glazing, and then you're going to bend your knees and you're going to come in and then you're going to stand. You're going to go out, check that you're still above your pelvis, bend, and then slowly coming in. So the standing splits offer such a lot in terms of whole body pelvic health, and there's many variations that I like to do on this one. Let's do the other side. So carefully dismounting, make sure there's no obstacles in the way as you or your client are dismounting and mounting there. And we go all the way out to find this is the start position, and you check that you're not sticking your tail out, you're not tucking it under, but it's balanced underneath you and your ribs are balanced underneath there. The arms can go wherever. So we're holding it and then we bend down, feel the base of the pelvis widening and narrowing, and then come up. Inhale, open, and then we bend and come in, and you can have a rhythm. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. You might find that doing it with the breath initially is more than your client is able to muster up the coordination for, and then you can introduce it slowly. The important thing is that they are continuing to breathe, and that in itself, just being upright, getting the stimuli of the spine, the specific movements that we're doing, that will invite the relationship to reform between the diaphragm and the pelvic diaphragm. So don't get too fixated on breathe in now and breathe out now. As long as they are breathing, the body, and that's the goal, isn't it? The body will naturally respond as it needs to for good function, given the stimuli of the reformer and the movements. Anyway, that's where we're going to end our little brief intro, our sample class on the reformer for whole body pelvic health. I'm beyond excited. Well, I could have just gone on and on and on because the reformer lends itself so beautifully to supporting women with all manner of pelvic health conditions. So this is going to work really, really well. For those of you that have access to a reformer, you've got little nuggets of ideas that you can integrate into the practice that you already do with people, and you'll probably find that instinctively you've been doing some of these things anyway in certain ways that I will teach you and invite you to do through the reformer course for whole body pelvic health. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you very soon. Bye everyone.